California is not seeing the tax revenue from marijuana that it once expected. Meantime, some politicians in the state are looking to create state-chartered banks to try and help the budding industry get better access to banking services. A lot to try and figure out in this industry, and joining us right now is Brett Hundley. He is senior research analyst at Seaport Global. Brett, I know you just went across the West Coast. You spent time in California, in Washington State, trying to figure it out. What did you come away thinking?
Well, California has some issues on, on its hands, certainly with tax revenues being lighter than expected. I think a lot of that is related to the illicit market. Law enforcement in California has just done a pretty poor job of closing down illegal operations. And these aren't, guys in backpacks selling, baggies of weed. These are stores that are standing up illegally, and they're competing against legal operations. So that makes it hard to bring in tax revenue. And then secondly, tax rates themselves. I mean, a lot of times you're getting to the checkout counter in California and you're spending 45 or 50% in taxes. And so that moves people from the rec market into the medical market. And although we don't have good data on this, we do think that the medical patient count in California is starting to really skyrocket. And we think that that's hurting tax revenues as well.
That's a really interesting point. I wondered how that was going to work out with taxes so high on recreational. Does that keep people? I didn't realize moving to medical. I always wondered if it would keep the illicit drug supply in business because it would be so much cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, the tax rate is definitely part of it. And California looked at this. They thought about reducing some taxes recently, and they decided against it. But by our count, the medical patient count for medical marijuana in California is over 3% of the population there, and that's one of the highest in the U.S.
Kevin O'Leary is our guest host today, and Kevin, I know you've been doing a little bit of research yourself. What have you come away with thinking? What are your thoughts on the pot stocks overall?
I had the unique opportunity to sit at a table during the Raptors intermission with pretty well the cannabis industry in Canada. All the CEOs were there. I've got to bring this lawyer on. His name is Perry DeLise, who kind of is the guy up there that's taking all these companies public. But here's what I learned. They're all teasing me that I don't invest in this, and I can't. It's a Schedule I narcotic by federal regulations. I can't touch it. The industry is going to bifurcate. What's going to happen in the next 2 years is these companies are going to split themselves in half. One side medicinal, one side recreational. The recreational market, who cares? The medicinal market, which requires up to 2.5% THC molecule to be effective, is the big issue. They're going to be sitting down with the FDA and other regulators and start these trials to prove the efficiency of the medicinal side. Me as an investor, once it comes off the Schedule I narcotic, I would love to invest in this on the medicinal side. This industry is going to mature into a medicinal business. I don't care what happens to recreational. My wife won't even let it in the house, so it's not, I can't even invest in it. But if it could help my back pain and it was legal, I'd take it. And that is where this industry is going to go. And I think those smart CEOs up there that are figuring this out are going to bring these deals here to the U.S. and fund them here once they get regulatory approval. That's what's so interesting.
Hey, Brett, I know you've got a neutral rating on both Canopy and Aurora. What's your hang-up? What do you know like?
Well, the valuations are pretty expensive on a number of the Canadian LPs, licensed producers, and part of that's because they've received capital flows thus far. And I kind of agree with Kevin. I do think that the industry is going to bifurcate. I think you'll have that recreational piece that's centered around THC, but then there is a much larger market opportunity. We're calling it, mainstream delivery of health and wellness products. So I used to cover packaged food for a while. There's not a boardroom in packaged food that isn't thinking about sprinkling some CBD or some CBC or something like that into their products to try and revitalize growth. And historically, that's where we've thought that the Canadian LPs are best set up. Increasingly, though, we do think that big food, big beverage, big pharma, big tobacco, we think that they're increasingly looking at hemp manufacturers. We think they're increasingly looking at biosynthetic cannabinoid producers. And so the Canadian LPs are starting to say, you know what, we need to go out and buy it or build it ourselves instead of having these strategic tie-ups with big CPG and big pharma.
Can I ask you, just out of the Canadian companies that are listed, if one wanted to take a position in one that was forward-thinking, as you've suggested, it's going to go after the bigger market, which names, because there's so many nascent, tiny companies public in this space that I'm sure aren't going to make it, but if you wanted to take a 5% weighting in cannabis, what would you buy? Give us 3 names. Give us 2 names. Give me any name.
Well, Canopy Growth would be at the top of our list. Again, Seaport, we do have a neutral rating on Canopy, but they're very well run. They have a ton of money to spend, and they sit back and think. A lot of these companies today, they're just moving at blinding speed. We don't feel like they're sitting back and doing the thinking part. And Canopy, you can really tell that they think strategically about this industry, and they'll be there in the end. Back in the U.S., you know, when we talk to investors, they really like the dispensary channel. They can figure that out better. They know the regulation that's going to be around it. They know that people have been using cannabis recreationally for the past 100 years. They know that'll continue for the next 100 years. So from an investment standpoint, it makes better sense for them. Curaleaf, Green Thumb, they're 2 of the best operators in the U.S. Green Thumb is particularly responsible with capital allocation.